Please give a warm welcome to Elissa Yancey.
So when I tell you that my mother loved to drive, I am not exaggerating. Let me give you an example. When I was in elementary school, she would drive me to school in the morning. She would drive to pick me up to take me home for lunch. She would drive me back to school after lunch, and then she would come to drive to take me home after school. We lived 1 block from my elementary school. So to give you an idea of why my mother loved to drive so much, it helps to understand that she grew up the youngest of 14 kids in southeastern Kentucky, and she didn't get her first driver's license until she was in her 30s and already had 3 children. By the time I was born, she was 42. I'm number 6 of 6. And by the time I was in elementary school, driving was something that happened every single day for my mom. So it made sense that when my dad passed away at the age of 75, my mother continued to drive and actually took on more driving duties because he could no longer be a chauffeur for us. And on occasion, a couple times a week, I would ask her to pick up my 2 elementary school-age sons from school, take them to her house, where they could hang out with their mom, which is what they called their mom's mom, my mom, until I got off of work. And all was fine with that until one day, my older son told me about a secret adventure he'd had with Mom on that day on the way home from school. He was reticent to tell me the whole story because she had made him promise not to, but I eventually got it out of him. It seems that she had gone to pick him and his brother up from school, got them into the back seat, buckled them in, and started driving away with his door open. So, of course, he screamed, and he was afraid he was going to fall out into the street, and she pulled over, shut the door, and said, everything was fine, you were buckled in, and let's just keep this between ourselves. We don't need to bother your mother with it, right? So at that point, I'm left with a choice. 1, I can confront my mother about her driving and about this incident and end up in an argument about her driving skills. Or 2, decide that I have other options to get my kids home from school, and she's in her late 70s. It's a lot to put on her to take 2 little kids home from elementary school, and we can work around any other times that she might be taking them back to her house. I choose option 2. Which is fine for a while, and on occasion I'll notice a little scratch on the bumper that she can explain away as having hit a pylon in a parking garage, nothing out of the ordinary. Until a few years later, I get a phone call from one of her neighbors. This is a neighbor that I had gone to high school with, very, very Cincinnati, right? So she calls me up and she says, "Elissa, something awful has happened. It's your mother." And I'm terrified. What happened? And she says, "She almost killed a little kid today. There was a little boy on a tricycle going down the sidewalk right in front of her driveway, and she's coming down the driveway too fast. And a bunch of us neighbors went up, and we yelled, and we screamed at her to stop. And she did before she hit him, but we're pretty sure she didn't even see him." So I took a deep breath, and I thanked her. And I immediately called my sister who lived in town. There were only 2 of us girls in town, and any of you in big families know it's the girls that usually get this kind of work. And I told her what happened, and we agreed it was time for an intervention, and it was time to happen that night. So I called my mom. I asked if it was okay if we came over to hang out with her, and she was thrilled because she could have both of her daughters who lived in town hang out with her as a girls' night, right? Until we show up and flank her on either side of the couch, and I tell her that we knew what happened with the tricycle rider and the car. She flipped into complete denial mode, was so furious with those neighbors for being so nosy, and what business did they have telling us about her driving ability? She was just fine, thank you very much. And round we went for what seemed like forever, until finally, at an impasse, I said, "Well, let me just take a look at your driver's license. Let's just see when it expires, and we'll think about maybe we need to talk to the doctor about some accommodations we can make, just some way to make this process less stressful." So at first she didn't want to do it, but eventually she pulled her purse up onto her lap, looked through her purse. "I can't find it," she says. And I'm like, "Okay, well, I'll look at the purse for you, no problem," right? And I reach over to grab the purse, and she clutches it closer to her chest. And then she eventually looks in and pulls out a card, which is the size and shape of a driver's license, and puts it right back in. And I'm like, there's something weird about this, right? I don't think that's quite normal. So I asked, so can I just take a look at that a little closer? It just looks off. Grudgingly, she pulls it back out and hands it over. And I can tell right away, this is not a driver's license. It's a state identification card. And that's what I say. This is not a driver's license. This is a state identification card. This is not good, right? You are not driving legally right now. You have to have realized, and I look at the picture on this card, and she is furious, right? Really, really angry looking. And she has to realize that this is not okay. So we're like, it's illegal for you to drive. You can't drive anymore. This is really, really problematic. And she says, no, that's what they gave me at the BMV. Of course it's a license. I'm like, no, it says right here, state identification card. If anything happened, if you got in an accident, it could be catastrophic. And she says, no, don't worry, I have insurance. To which I say, that's not how insurance works. So at this point, my sister and I know we can't leave without the keys. We go back and forth some more. My mom swears she won't drive. She just wants to keep the keys as a reminder of my father. That's not going to work. And she hands over a set of keys to me, at which time I say, okay, so how about your spare set of keys? And she hands those over to my sister, again, probably a little too easily in retrospect. And we're on our way, and we promise we'll take care of her and make sure everything's fine, and this is the right thing to do. And it's hard, but we're going to do it, and we'll get through it together. So the next afternoon, I'm at work, and I decide to call my mom just to see how she's doing, maybe cheer her up a little. You know, it was a hard night. And she has a landline only. This is in the early 2000s, and I call, and the phone rings and rings and rings. No answer. She could be in the basement. Maybe she's in the bathroom. I wait 10, 15 minutes, call again. The phone rings and rings and rings and rings. So I tell my boss, hey, I need to go check on my mom. Head out to Norwood, drive by the driveway. Sure enough, it's empty. And the first thought I have is, oh my gosh, her birthday's in November. It's April, November, December, January, February, March. She's been driving illegally for 6 months, and she's had 6 months to get as many spare keys made as possible and hide them throughout the house. What are we up against? And the second thing I think is, where is she and is she safe? And I figure she's gone to the Kroger. It's a 5-minute drive down back streets. She can do it with her eyes closed, and let's face it, she probably has. And I drive around the parking lot at Kroger, and sure enough, there's the Dodge Intrepid sitting by a cart corral, looking all innocent, right? I get to the car, pull beside it, call my sister, tell her the scoop, and say, I'm going to need you to come after whenever you can, drive the car back, and this time put it way back in the back of our backyard and park it at a funny angle so she can't possibly get it out because she won't be able to maneuver it. And I wait. And then I see my mom coming out of the grocery store, pushing her cart with a little gallon of milk in it, looking so happy. It's a beautiful spring day. The sun is shining. She's on top of the world. And then she sees me. And her expression changes pretty quickly, but by the time she gets to the car, she's recovered, and she's so ecstatic to see me. Elissa, it's great to see you. What brings you here? Just full of curiosity, right? And I say, you know what brought me here. You're driving illegally. You don't have a license. You told us you gave us all the keys. I am rattling off facts fast and furiously. And she's like, it's okay, I'll just drive home. I just needed some milk. And I'm like, no, you're not going to drive home. And in that moment, it becomes really clear that our roles have completely reversed. I'm the one lecturing my mom about driving without a license, and I'm the one taking her out of the driver's seat. So I get her back to the house. We have a discussion. I take the keys, and when my sister comes with the car, she pulls it way back in the back of the backyard, right? This should be safe. The next day I drive by, casual, cool. The car's back in the driveway. So I go in, I say to my mom, all right, so give me the keys. I know you must have some. You got a car back out into the driveway. So she hands over the keys. I drive the car back up into the backyard, and this time, take the battery. Next day, come back, car's back in the driveway. It's like a miracle, right? Of the friendly neighbor who will take her to the AutoZone to buy a new battery and install it for her. Okay, Mom, give me the keys. Drive the car back up in the backyard. Take the spark plugs. That'll fool them. It can't. How easy can it be to diagnose, right? Next day, the car's back in the driveway. Spark plug, same neighbor, nice. Eventually, we get one of my older brothers to get the car to his older son who can drive it and take it out of my mom's hands for good, right? Thank goodness, because she had a lot of car keys. And my mom died in 2010. And since then, my kids are grown and they have car keys and cars of their own. And as I'm getting older, I start thinking about that day that's going to come when I need to hand my keys over. And while I hope and I pray that I go gently and gracefully into that dark, driveless night, and I embrace things like Uber and Lyft, right? There's a part of me that knows I am still my mother's daughter. And I'm only 53, so that gives me a whole lot of years to make a whole lot of sets of car keys. Thank you.
Let's give it up one more time for Elissa.